Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode of our Sartorial Talks. Today, I'm gonna try to answer all the questions you have about double-breasted suits. And believe me, we receive a lot of questions. Am I too stout to wear a double-breasted suit? Am I too thin? Am I too tall? Am I too short? Am I too young? There's a lot of questions about this intriguing piece of garments, and I'm gonna try to cover completely the subject. Where the double-breasted suit is coming from? That's the first question to ask. It's very easy. It's coming from the sea. I mean, not literally from the sea, from the ships on the sea, from the Navy, from the naval world. It's what we still call, by the way, today, a peacoat. That is the fisherman or naval army coat, which is 2 layers of fabric, and one layer is going above the other layer of fabric. And this is what we call a 8-on-4 buttoning. That is to say, 8 buttons with 4 functioning buttons. And you will see that a lot of people are sometimes confused about the appellation. How do we describe a double-breasted suit? And I'm going to teach you this very quickly because it's extremely easy to understand. So if you are interested in the double-breasted universe, you probably have heard appellations like 6-on-1, 6-on-2, 4-on-2, and you may be confused about what this 6-on-1, 6-on-2 means. It's very easy. The first number is the number of buttons you have on your jacket. Most of the time, on a suit, you have 6 buttons. And then the second number, 6-on-2, for example, describe the number of buttons that are active, that you can actually button, that is to say, which have a buttonhole and a button. So in the case of a 6-and-2, as I show you now, you have 6 buttons, and then on the side that is gonna overlap, you have 2 buttonholes. That is to say, 6 buttons out of which 2 are functioning, 6-on-2. That's the most classical form of double-breasted suit. If you want something more, I would say, stylish, less classical, with a little bit more of flair, which is very interesting. Specifically in Italy and the south of Italy, they're very good at that. You should go for the other main category of double-breasted. It's called the 6-on-1. So, as I will show you now, the 6-on-1 is the same principle. You have a layer on fabric which is going above the other layer on fabric. It has 6 buttons, but only the last one, so only one button can be buttoned. So we call it a 6-on-1. The buttoning is much lower and it gives a longer roll to your jacket. So it's considered to be more casual than the 6-on-2, which is considered to be more classic and more business and more formal. And I'm going to show you another example of double-breasted, which is still a 6-on-1. This 6-on-1 has become the signature double-breasted of the Chiffonelli bespoke house in Paris. So as you can see, it's the same structure as the one before. There was a Dark from Napoli. This one is from Chiffonelli Paris. So you see it's 6 buttons and only one is buttoning, but the button which is buttoning is much higher than the former suit, which was an Italian. So on my Italian 6-on-1, you can see something very low. And on the French 6-on-1, it's the same buttoning system, but it's a little bit higher. Now you have the major types of double-breasted: 6-on-2, the most classic; 6-on-1, Italian style, very low, very casual; 6-on-1 French with the last row of button a little bit higher. That makes a suit which is an hybrid between a casual and a formal suit, and then I particularly like personally. Now a few things about the double-breasted, because once again, it's a very intriguing and interesting subject. I caught the bug of the double-breasted thanks to Massimo Chiffonelli, which is the cousin of Lorenzo Chiffonelli. I remember it very well. It was in 2008. I wanted to do my second bespoke suit with Chiffonelli. And immediately Massimo said, "Oh, Hugo, with your style, you should go to a double-breasted. You should immediately go double-breasted." And me, I had some kind of preconceived ideas about the double-breasted. It's from the 80s. It's for older people, or it's for notaries or bankers, but me, I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm not sure double-breasted, and then Massimo insisted because he knew a little bit my taste. And it was a 6-on-2 on midnight blue that I've been using a lot, specifically for formal occasions. And I was very happy. That my first step. And then when you try for the first time to wear a double-breasted suit, the impression you have, it's in a double-breasted suit which is well-cutted specifically for you if you go bespoke. When you put on your suit, you feel invincible. It's difficult to explain. It's something totally different than a single-breasted. And why do I say well-cut? Because that's the issue with double-breasted. Many people say many things about double-breasted. You know, in the sartorial world, there's so many people now who speaks with the social network, with the hundreds of blogs and hundreds of influencers, so-called. Everything and nothing is said at the same time about double-breasted. I've heard so many incorrect things saying that if you are too stout, you should avoid double-breasted because it puts some more fabric on the front of your silhouette. If you are too short, you should avoid double-breasted because the lapel will stretch your silhouette on the horizontal side. All this kind of stuff. The only thing I would answer to that is first of all, if you like it, wear it. Never, never, never listen to people who forbid you to wear something. If you like it, try it, and if it looks good on you, buy it and wear it. That's the first thing. Believe in your own eyes. Believe in your own taste. Trust your judgment and trust your feeling. But the second thing which is true is that a double-breasted, to look good on any kind of figure, has to be well cut. Because, well, a not so well cut single-breasted suit may be sufficient. Honestly, if you go double-breasted, you have to choose to go double-breasted. It has to be well cut, because if it's not well cut, it is a catastrophe immediately, and you will not be able to wear a suit. So this is why a double-breasted suit is difficult to find, or was difficult, extremely difficult to find in ready-to-wear, and it's still not easy to find a good double-breasted suit. It's not that easy to find in ready-to-wear. It's more easy than it used to be a few years ago, thanks to the sartorial movement, but it's still not very, it's not your everyday suit. It's not the suit you're gonna buy on an everyday basis. But it's also more difficult to make. And you can ask any tailors in the world, even if they say, oh, no, it's the same for me. No, it's not true. It's more difficult to work with because it's more fabric. It's a more complex geometrical figure, and you understand that the fact that you add layers of fabric on the front picture of somebody means that you have to be extremely balanced in the proportion to make sure that this suit really fits that body. So, the first thing to remember if you want to acquire a double-breasted is the cut. The cut is fundamental. It comes before the fabric, it comes before everything, it comes before the style, the cut. And if you go for a ready-to-wear, I strongly advise you take your time in the fitting room, or if you do it online where you are putting on your suit for the first time, to check if it's really cut for you. Is the color gap? There's no color gap, that is to say if your color is really sticking to your shirt color. This is the first thing to look at. And one thing also which is very interesting and that I will show you now is the fact that if you have a little tension on the button, I don't say a big tension. A big tension means the jacket is too small for you. But if you have a little tension at the buttoning of your jacket, it means that the suit is well cut for you, because if there's no tension, most of the time a double-breasted can become visually too large for you. So it's a very subtle balance you have to find. This buttoning button, the working button, has to be a little bit tight. One thing important to understand also about the style of a double-breasted suit. A double-breasted suit is always with big lapels. I mean, I've seen a few attempts of people who wanted to innovate, trying to put notch lapels on a double-breasted suit. Honestly, between you and me, and God knows if I have an open mind in men's style, it was horrific. So no notch lapel, never on a double-breasted suit. because it doesn't go well. It's not even explicable why, but I think there's probably a geometrical explanation for that, but it doesn't work. Pick lapels only, that's very important. Let me give you now a few examples of which kind of double-breasted suits are recommended for which kind of figure. If you are thin and if you are short, under 5'8", you should consider what we call a 4-on-1. There's a very famous photo of Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, who, as far as I know, is not a very tall man. He's around 5'7", and he is wearing a double-breasted suit, 4-on-1. And I remember we wrote an article on this on Parisian Gentleman, specifically to explain why, if you are short, a 4-on-1 double-breasted can help you stretch your silhouette by putting very few annoyances, disturbances on your jacket. There's only 4 buttons, so it's very discreet. You attract attention to the upper part of the torso because it's totally blank, and you elongate the silhouette, you stretch the silhouette, and it's not busy at all on the front here, and it has a real phenomenon, it's a visual phenomenon to elongate your silhouette. Now, on the contrary, if you are very stout, very big, very sturdy, specifically in the front, I will not recommend you to buy a double-breasted of the peg. If you really want to go double-breasted while having a stout figure, you should go to a tailor. Why? Because the problem for you is on the front panel, is what you show on the front panel of your suit. And with the extra layer of fabric, if you are really sturdy and stout on this area, it may become tricky, ready to wear, because some suit can quickly transform into skirts. You understand? That is to say, too much fabric, because in order to cover your excess of weight here, the ready-to-wear garment will have to be quite large. But if you are a little bit thinner at the beginning of the legs, all of a sudden your suit becomes a skirt. So you have to be very careful of that. My advice would be, if you are stout, go to a tailor if you want to go double-breasted. If you are too tall, you can wear a double-breasted suit and use the double-breasted buttoning to work on the horizontal frame of your silhouette. That's one of the most important rules to understand all this sartorial subject. And that's a good occasion to come back to it. The dimension and the proportion of your body will guide the tailor or will guide your choice of ready-to-wear. And there's always a solution, either to stretch your body vertically or to stretch your body horizontally, visually. And for that, you play with the lapel, you play with the button, we play with different features on the jacket. So in the case of somebody who is extremely tall, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna soften this tallness effect with the buttons. And so with the 6-on-1, for example, we're gonna put the first row of buttons that you don't use way in the mid, almost in the middle of the jacket, so that you work on the horizontal line of this tall figure. And you will see that the result can be extremely interesting. You can all of a sudden make a short person look way taller and an extremely tall person look more balanced, simply by playing with the lapels, with the buttons, and specifically with the double-breasted. One last thing about the double-breasted. You will read everywhere the first rule about the double-breasted: it has to be worn buttoned, never unbuttoned, whether you are standing or whether you are sitting. Well, I must admit that I disagree. Specifically when I'm sitting, I like to unbutton. Is it normal that you have to suffer when you are sitting, or you have to, your jacket, you know, your tie is about to jump on the people in front of you? No, just unbutton it. Just be at your ease. Style is also being at one's ease. I know the purists don't like that, but I don't care. I think that a double-breasted unbuttoned when you are sitting is almost mandatory. But even when you are standing, wearing it open, for me, it's not a problem. And you will see more and more in Italy, specifically when it's really hot. It's okay to open your double-breasted. It's all about you, how you can pull it off. And me, I love to wear them open. One very last trick is, do you know, and that's another debate, is everybody says, even on the 6-on-2, you never button the last button. Never. Some people say if you look at the golden age of Hollywood in the 1940s, at Jimmy Stewart back in the years, Gary Cooper or Fred Astaire, they were wearing their double-breasted suit, even Cary Grant, with the last button. So it's a matter of fashion. But do you know where this fashion of never buttoning the last button of a jacket, except on a 6-on-1, because this is the only one you can button, but on a 6-on-2 or on a normal single-breasted jacket, there's a rule saying you never button the last button. Why? In fact, it comes from our good friend, the King Edward VII, in England. We are at the beginning of the 20th century, and this guy he had a nickname called Bertie, and this is actually my favorite tie knot. It's called the Old Bertie. This is the way this guy was tying his knot, and I will explain this to you in a future episode of Sartorial Talks. And so Bertie, Edward VII, was too big and too fat, and so he was unable to button the last button of all his jackets and all his waistcoats and vests. So this is why, to please the king, all the courtisans and the court decided that it was now a rule not to make the king uncomfortable and feel bad. Everybody started not to button the last button just to mimic the king. But in fact, the reality is that the king didn't button the last button because he couldn't button it for some physical reason. So you see, behind every rule, quote unquote, like that, there's always a very pragmatic origin. And this is the origin of why we don't button the last button of our suit. So I hope you know now more about double-breasted. I hope this will give you some guidance and some guidelines on how to acquire your double-breasted. I really invite you to try this kind of suit because it's more than a suit. It's a stylistic statement. You're going to feel extremely comfortable in it and at your best. And this is what we want you to be, at your best. Cheers.